Hello, everyone. My name's Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Andy Slater and John Lord, two great friends of mine with a shared passion, as I have, of firefighter welfare and health, especially in respect of particulates and contaminants. Good afternoon, Andy. How are you?
Good afternoon, Duncan. I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much.
So tell our audience a little bit about Andy Slater and where you fit into this global picture.
Sure, thank you. So I'm currently the managing director of PGI Safety, which is a division of PGI Inc., a company that's been around since the 1940s who specialise in innovation textiles to finished goods and more certainly particulate protection. But I'm fortunate enough to have been in this amazing industry for nearly 20 years now. Worked as a director for companies like Scott Safety, so predominantly PPE, SCBA, respirators, and thermal imaging. And I don't mind admitting, and anyone that knows me knows this, I absolutely love this industry. It's a privilege working in it, and I love what we do.
Yes, and I think that you're now well and truly a huge member of this global family that we're all proud to be part of. John, coming to you, John Lord is a name that's well known around the industry from your firefighting days, and now to the fantastic work you're doing in relation to training and development in relation with your own business, SimTrainer, but also the work that you're throwing your life at in relation to engaging in respect of firefighter cancers. Tell us a little bit more about that, John.
All right, thanks, Duncan. Well, been around the fire service since 1979, so 45 and a half years now, 32 on ops, and then the last, as you know, predominantly in aviation. Don't really know how I migrated into it, but I absolutely love aviation. Met some fantastic people. Having been a cancer survivor and my wife as well, and I'm just on the cusp of another challenge with it personally, but there's nothing finer in life than getting a phone call from somebody who has listened to what we've said, has gone and got tested, has maybe found that they did have cancer, but they've caught it, and they're now in remission. And anybody who ain't got a tear in their eye when they get a phone call like that, well, they're not human. I don't have any agenda. I don't have any drivers. I've not got no political driver. It is just purely about saving the life of somebody or helping somebody prepare for what sitting in oncology is going to look like or going through radiotherapy. I love the fire service, but I think we all, and I know you've got a passion for it, Duncan, I know Andy does, I think we all recognise that this issue is wider than firefighters. It's responders, it's people who work in environments where they're exposed to ultrafine particulate matter, carcinogens and contaminants. So that's why.
Yeah, it's like you say, we're passionate about it. We care about those people that are in the job now and are going to have to stay in the job a lot longer to get what they rightly deserve. But I've been very fortunate through my fire service career and then post career one, if you like, to be able to be in a position where I've got the ability to bang the table, make people listen, but in a constructive and in a constructive way. So this is why sitting down with you two guys for me is so vitally important. We can put things in writing, we can put things on LinkedIn, but I'm seeing more and more feedback these days from the guys and girls out there that they are listening to podcasts. They're listening to what is being said. So if we've got the ability to do this on a semi-regular basis, just to provide that update, then all well and good. both of you have been hugely involved in putting on events to raise awareness. Andy, yours at Biggin Hill, I know that was where I listened to you speak first, John, was fabulous, and then the one that we went to Manchester with regard to invisible risks. I know you guys talk more regularly than the three of us, so what's coming around the corner in relation to the PGI event and the invisible risk event for 2025? Coming to you, Andy, first.
Sure. That's something that me and John have been talking about fairly recently, and we want to keep the same message going because it was very clear that it really hits home. But we think it's now focused more towards like Snomed codes, blood testing. I think I would like to see more female firefighters and personnel involved, because obviously it affects them as anybody else. And you're right, and you just hit on it then, Duncan, about people in the service for a long time, and John knows my son's a firefighter, and he's been in there 3 years. He's 23 years old, and so we've for people like him, we've got to keep this message hitting home. It's so important. Mm.
Behind things. I think the female side of it, just to put a bit more flesh on the bones that Andy mentioned, I did the Women in the Fire Service weekend in June at the Fire Service College. I had some really good discussions with the 3 workshops that I ran. And what came out of that, and a survey which I've actually closed the survey now, I just need to compile it. It was focused at female firefighters. Probably well over 85% said they would be interested in knowing more, and that they wanted more information specific to the female risk. And a big proportion also said that yes, they would, if it was available, wear protective undergarments. So there's some interesting outcomes from the survey. These surveys are not, scientific. They're me asking questions to focus groups. The one that I did previously, which had a lot of people who had actually had cancer, that also threw out some hugely interesting points. So what I'll do, I'll compile both of them into a bit of a report for you, Duncan, and I'll send that, and then you can compile it however you want, So I think the female risk is huge, and we need to highlight just exactly what we know already, because that's going to grow. From the invisible risk side, I've been trying for a number of months. We've had some personal issues to deal with. I'm planning to form the Invisible Risk Foundation. The idea of that would be to create almost like a training arm, a not-for-profit training arm to raise awareness, and the dream would be to have trainers on station who actually know the detail. So when we're telling people about decon, and other processes, they can actually go into the detail of why we need to do that. without getting too graphic, I'll just give you a quick example. I've been mentioning for a few weeks about how guys need to wash their hands before they go for a pee, because we know that Robbie, bladder cancers, testicular cancer. And then through the survey, I started to see a number of replies coming in on penile cancer. And I talked about it at the Fire Service College weekend, saying about how there is an increase. And 2 days afterwards, there was a BBC article that said in Brazil there'd been 6,500 amputations due to penile cancer. It was literally as spooky as it literally come out a couple of days later. And the point is that every operational firefighter knows they've jumped behind a wall, gone behind a tree, on a bonfire in the middle of the night, having a quick pee when their hands are absolutely black. How do we know what we're doing when we're doing that? So
totally agree there, and at some point as well, we need to recognise the part that the employer plays in this, and when we talk about stakeholders, about who's going to pick up the pieces, and a lot of the time we're seeing people that get affected late in their career, or even after they've retired, when they find that they've got the issues. But these issues have manifested themselves over time. To me, the Firefighters Charity is a huge stakeholder in this whole issue, because a lot of the time, at the moment, before we get the foundation off the ground, or we get the awareness to a point that there's an easy place to go to, the Firefighters Charity must be getting calls from people that getting these messages to say, I don't like to tell you this, but you've got cancer. So what do you think the next stage is in relation to bringing in the employer and other support networks, John?
I think the secret with all of this is that we've got to break the silo working. I think you know yourself from your connections, as Andy does with aviation, how much fantastic work aviation's done in the last 18 months since our seminar at November. And personal friends of yours, down at Leonardo, Neil and John, and Chris and Neil and Mick at Biggin Hill, have done fantastic work. For me, they've lit a beacon of what it should look like. But even at those, establishments, we're still fighting against budgets. But outside of that, we've got aviation doing great work. We've got some local authorities doing great work, some maybe not doing as much. And they're not talking to each other in the detail that they should be. And then if you look at, I had a conversation with NARUC, National Ambulance Resilience Unit, and I know that Andrew Lloyd there started to do some great work. But where does it all join up? Where does that join together? Because when you look at where this kicked off in the UK, which was predominantly Professor Anna Steck and the FBU's decon programme, that started to shine the light. But we were 8 years late to the party with that. But if we use, we're seeing seminars where Andy's seminars are an open door to aviation, to local authority. And what we actually need is aviation, local authority, police federation, other agencies to these. But we also need that NFCC stops looking at things as just this is a local authority issue, because it isn't. And they're missing out on some great work by doing that. Now, I am hopeful that certainly one of the guys who's quite high up in NFCC has just been promoted. He's down in your neck of the woods. And I'm hoping that he has listened to what I've been saying about silo working, and, that starts to change. I think the FBU, as long as they don't politicise it, they've done fantastic work with this. Let's not, take anything away from what the FBU have done. But they were looking after their members, quite rightly. But in aviation, the issue is much wider. It's not just the firefighters, it's about the whole airside community and the exposures to them all. Ports, there's so many areas, oil and gas. It's about how do we take the message to the new government and say, what are you going to do about it? We know it's going to cost money. We absolutely know that. But if the Americans and the Canadians and the Scandinavians can pick up that tab and do something with it, why can't we?
Yeah, very much so. And I agree with you. This is not about scoring points. It's about saying we all want an outcome that's going to provide the right level of information for people to get what they need when they need it. It's about sharing of information, regardless, like you say, whether you're a paramedic, a police officer, a firefighter, or you work in an ancillary role that comes into contact with those, as well as the industrial processes. We need to pull down the information that's there, and where need be, tweak it to suit our audience. But like you say, if we've got one set of information that anybody could to come into, then we're putting all our resources in one basket rather than recreating the wheel across lots of different ones. Andy, from the manufacturer side and the fantastic work that's being done by lots of different companies within the sector, I know from conversations with yourself, with ex-colleagues within fire and rescue, that there is a frustration about the way in which some unscrupulous companies are looking to gain ground on this by professing to have products that meet one standard, but unfortunately, when you drill down, that's not the case.
Yes, indeed, and it's massively. Well, actually, I go as far as to say it really annoys me, angers me, because we're talking, category 3 PPE here, and this isn't about a competitive thing. This isn't a commercial thing. As I mentioned before, my flesh and blood's in a firefighter. And I think what we've seen is, as certainly PGI started to gain a lot of traction in the UK, and we, for example, are dual certified NFPA in the end. And the reason why that's so important, and it relates to what you're saying, is because there isn't an EN standard right now, for example, for particulate protection. And customers, authorities are getting more educated, and they're realising the importance of wanting the dual certified products, as an example. So yes, and what we found is that in tenders and just out in the streets, there are a couple of manufacturers who are claiming to be NFPA compliant, for example. And customers are saying, look, they're NFPA. And I said, no, they're not. You've got to ask for the test certificate. What does that test certificate look like? Because believe it or not, some people don't know what that looks like, what data should be on that. And they're pulling the wool over their eyes. In some cases, it could be a case of they're using a component part that might be NFPA compliant, and then putting that into their product. By putting that into their product does not make that product NFPA. It has to be recertified. It's very, very expensive, and it's not easy to pass. And they've been caught out on a couple of occasions. And for the life of me, and a lot of people know me, are probably sick of me hearing it, saying it, but you just can't do that in this industry. This is life safety equipment. It's unethical. It's immoral. Just to for profit. And we're coming after them. It's as simple as that. They're getting exposed. And I will not stop until we're finished, So yeah. And
sorry, I'm just going to butt in there and say, what has been the reaction of fire and rescue services to the information that they're receiving, that they've just spent a great deal of taxpayers' money on something that they then find out is not fit for purpose?
Yeah, same as mine. It's initially shock and anger as well, because, like you say, it is right, it's taxpayers' money. More importantly as well, a lot of them don't have the time and the resources to do these things, and they certainly don't have the time to have to fact check everything. And that's why the purpose of these seminars as well, where we draw attention to the right questions to ask, and not just on standards and certifications, it's performance standards as well, saying yes, it meets this breathability criteria as an example, and they'll just tick a box, yes it does. I'm like, whoa, hang on, look for the test data, ask for the proof. Again, this is what it looks like. Competition is a good thing. We love it because it's what drives us. It's what drives innovation. That's brilliant. That's not what we're trying to stifle. There's some great competitors out there that I speak highly of. We're actually good friends, but there's a couple in particular that are unscrupulous, and it angers them as much as it angers me, and they happily spread the word, so people are aware of what's going on in the marketplace. And it also, I think, besmudges our good name as well. There's a lot of brilliant manufacturers out there that are passionate as us, yes, it's a business. We have to make money, because we didn't make money, we can't run seminars. We can't do these things. But it all has to be done on a level playing field.
We've also got this issue where and it goes back to John was touching on about the silo working. We're still in this situation where we've got, let's say, 47 fire and rescue services. It may be a few more, maybe a few less. But I go back to my time when I was in R&D as a leading hand all those years ago. It was a case of we pick the telephone up and we'd speak to somebody at Dorset Fire and Rescue, or we speak to somebody at South Wales, or we'd look at speaking to a manufacturer who we were hoping to do some business with and say, who have you sold to lately? I want to go and speak to somebody at speak to one of your customers. And what I found at 99% of the time was that a bona fide company would be more than happy to let you speak to their clients, because they had nothing to hide. Unfortunately, you've got situations now where we have individuals, through no fault of their own, being put into positions where they're expected to procure products on behalf of their fire and rescue service that have not got the knowledge and understanding of how to procure properly and undertake due diligence to ensure what they are purchasing is correct. And that comes down to the writing of the tender specification, because as well as I do, you can write a very open tender specification to ensure that you get the responses that you're looking for, but which leaves it open to the unscrupulous characters. Whereas if you write a very specific procurement document that crosses the T's and dots the I's, and it leaves nobody in any doubt about what is required. And that part of it must also frustrate bona fide manufacturers such as yourself, Andy.
It does, because as an organisation, we spend approximately $300,000 on certification. And by the way, you have to do that every year. If you have a product and you certify it for an NFPA example, you don't just do it once, you've got to do it every year. And if you've got more than one product, etc., it does frustrate you. One, because you're not comparing apples with apples, and two, it's the one of the main reasons it might not just be cost, is because it's such a tough standard to pass. And that's all well and good. There are authorities that that have the time, the resource to do all their due diligence. But unfortunately, not just authorities, but like you say, it could be smaller airports, what have you. They have to take the word, of the people that they're talking to. And later to find that I've had these conversations, Duncan, where the customers have said, are you telling me that this product I bought doesn't meet that? I'm saying, yes, it does. And here's the proof, by the way. Or ask for, and it's so wrong, isn't it? They've spent taxpayers' money. It might be their own money, buying a product that doesn't meet the standards. So it is incredibly frustrating. Yes, it really is.
Very much so. John, for you to come back on that.
Yeah, so the point that they're missing is that there has been no more emotive subject than contaminants, particulates and cancer in responders. And what they're missing is that people are talking to each other more than they ever have. We might not be getting it out to the silos like we want, but for example, I talk to pretty much every airport in the UK, the Crown dependencies and some of the overseas ones. So if there is somebody, shall we say, being blatant in the way that they're doing things, they won't just get a bad name with the one person that they've been bad with. It will go like wildfire through all those connections. And longer term, they're actually going to harm their business in short order because of that. Because previously, you might have, for example, down your way, Devon and Somerset, Avon, etc., talking to each other, but they might not have talked to Lancashire, Greater Manchester, Scottish Fire. With this subject, everybody is talking to each other at the March conference with 140 organisations there. So if you're going to be taking a shortcut to get one over on the good guys, in the end you're going to lose out because your reputation is going to plummet to the basement, in short order.
Yeah, very much so. And
it's the damage it can do in between those, isn't it, John? That's
it is, but I think, again, from a conference, standpoint, one of the things that we got as feedback from the Manchester one, not so much from Cranfield, but certainly from Manchester, and it's a discussion me and Alistair have had, is that, we don't mean this in a bad way, because I do recognise that people have to spend money as manufacturers and innovate to give us the solutions, but they don't want the speakers at the next events to be salespeople. You're standing up here and it's a sales pitch. That's not what people want. If we're talking about Andy's product, it isn't Andy, and Andy doesn't do this, standing up there saying, I've got this great product I want to sell you. What Andy's doing is saying, do you understand what breathable actually means? Do you understand what permeable actually means? So when you're looking for this stuff, this is what you need to be looking for. But he isn't saying, by the way, my product does that, and on the two that I've, spoke at with Andy, he hasn't done that. There's been some really good work done, and people have spent a lot of money in the research side of things, getting their products to be doing what they need to do, So I think for me, the lesson we took away is, if you're coming to any future conferences, that I organise, and you're coming with it just to view it as a chance to just do a blatant sales pitch, you're not going to get a look in.
No, very much so. And again, it goes back to the credibility of manufacturers, and knowing a lot of manufacturers across the whole spectrum of the industry. Those that know that they've got a great product will talk about the whole generics around the industry, like you say, about making people understand what the solutions are and how they've come up with, and let people make their own decisions about where they actually go. But if during that decision-making process they are then armed with the necessary knowledge and understanding about what they actually need, rather than saying, I need a fire hood or I need a flash hood. No, I now need a particulate hood that meets the following standards as per X, Y, and Z. Then they've got the necessary underpinning knowledge that they didn't have before they listened to Andy Slater speak. And I've listened to him speak on lots of occasions, and learned things on every one of them. And so nobody knows, and anybody that says that they know everything is wrong, because things are changing so rapidly, and however embedded you are within an organization, you just can't possibly keep up with everything. So you need people with each sector telling you about what's changed in order to give you that update. So this is why it is vitally important that conferences use the bona fide people to provide that knowledge and understanding. So,
yeah, definitely.
Absolutely agree.
John, one of the things I learned from the Manchester seminar was about Snomed, something that, having now spoken with you and others, is something that is vitally important that we get our medical professionals that look after us to be aware of the relevant Snomed information. Can you just tell the listener what Snomed is and what they need to do?
Yeah, so there's 2 codes currently, and there's one for a firefighter, and then there's a second Snomed code that sort of highlights occupational exposure to toxic agents. These codes, for the GPs that are using them, sit on your medical record. And once they're sat on the medical record, the idea is then that it will highlight diagnostic tests that the GP perhaps should consider over and above a member of the public. Now, the issue that we've got in the UK, and we know that they're in use in Northern Ireland because somebody's come back to me, and in fact the cards that we've been handed out were again something that Terberg and Mark McCracken over in Northern Ireland put together. We know that they're in use over there. I believe in Southern Ireland they're in use. It's a system on health records. But what we're finding, and I'm getting lots of feedback, I had somebody from Wales message me the other day, was that, my GP surgery's never heard of it. So Anna Steck did some of her own work on this, and I think Anna said out of the NHS areas she contacted, I think there's only about 50% that actually do recognise them. That needs to change. Why it needs to change, the value in it is simply this. Without giving details, I know of 3 people who, when the GP had the Snomed codes on, they were fast-tracked through to testing. There is 2 of them that there's certainly one of them that you both know who is having surgery because his GP recognised off the Snomed codes that they needed to do a little bit more. I also have some, somebody else who you don't know who is in the same position of the Snomed code, fast-tracked through to testing, and things have been picked up and are being dealt with. So, highly valuable. However, I think we need to also say, and this is perhaps the organisations such as the union that looks after the ambulance service, the police federation, is that if the second Snomed code is occupational exposure to toxic agents, then should that not be, for example, military personnel, RAF firefighters, soldiers who've been in flashbangs and things like that? It's about, the exposures are so wide. Should these not be on? We have at GPs. Tell the GP if you're a veteran. Why do we not tell them that we've been firefighters who've been for 30 plus years into all kinds of crap and seen all kinds of things? Police officers, paramedics, exposed routinely to toxic agents. A drug overdose, a person who's had a drug overdose and the paramedics up close and personal, are they not exposed through their occupation to toxic agents? So for me, I think the NHS not recognising Snomed across the board should be being addressed from a governmental level. The Department of Health should be saying Snomed codes need to be adopted across the NHS. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I totally agree, and this is something that, again, when you look to the NFCC in respect of the level that they're working at and the ability for them to get the ear of the Minister of Health and to get the Minister of Fire and Policing, or whatever title they give themselves nowadays, that this goes back to silo working. We need to be addressing this as an overarching group of first responders, if you like, in terms of the emergency services. Yes, it covers a lot more, but we've got to draw the line and say first responders need to really understand the risks open to them, that they find themselves open to, and how that affects their family, especially from an on-call perspective, where very often they haven't got shower facilities on their stations, and they take all the contaminants back home. And I regularly refer to ourselves seeing the beginning of another crisis, like we did with the shipbuilders that went home in their overalls to their houses, and their kids would hug their fathers as they walked through the door, only to now find out that they've got mesothelioma from ingesting all that crap that they've got on their overalls. Gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure for me. As you both know, the International Fire Safety Journal and the Fire and Safety Journal Americas, whatever we can do at both publications to raise the awareness of these issues, then you're pushing against an open door. It goes without saying. And I think the Fire and Rescue Service, or I know the Fire and Rescue Service, are indebted to people like you both for making it, putting that passion out there and getting the information across. I'm Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and I've had the pleasure this afternoon of speaking to Andy Slater, managing director of PGI Limited, and also John Lord, managing director of SimTrainer and founder of Invisible Risk. Gentlemen, thank you both very, very much.
Cheers, Duncan.
Thanks, Duncan.